Hey, welcome to Cruising with Phil. Back from a hiatus after the election. My first interview after the election. My name is Phil the Cruz, Cruising with Phil, and today I got a really special guest. I met this lady on Twitter last year, reading all her texts. A community advocate. I like this lady a lot. I want to say one day I'm going to meet her. Never think I would meet her on my podcast, but here we are. And I met her last during the election at the Ontario conference, and I said, Alison Stewart sitting on the chair, and she said to me, "Who are you?" And we took it from there. So, Alison Stewart, thanks for coming to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me, Phil.
It's great. So it's great to have you here. Yeah, I know you're a busy lady. So just tell the people who you are and what you're all about.
So my name's Alison Stewart. I live in Moss Park, or Ward 13. I am the Director of Advocacy and Public Policy for Cycle Toronto. I bike for everything, to get around, for commuting purposes, for recreational activities, and simply because it's joyful. And my goal is to make it as easy, accessible, and to everyone. Toronto has become a much better cycling city, and it's pretty exciting working on the file, especially with the outcome of the recent election. We have a woman mayor who
Yes,
is a cyclist as well.
finally, it's overdue for a woman. I think we had one mayor, right? One mayor, Toronto, a long time ago, right? I think we,
Well, there was John Sewell,
yeah,
um, and also I believe David Miller was known to ride his bike as
yeah,
well.
yeah, that's right. Wow. So I know you do a lot of. Are you the co-founder of Cycle Toronto, or
Oh, no, not at all. My origin story with Cycle Toronto began in 2013 as a volunteer. I was looking to turn my road rage into positive solution. Um, and so I started volunteering with Cycle Toronto. I became worked in the local advocacy group of what is now Ward 13. And then fast forward to 2021, I started volunteering for them in a different capacity on their anti-oppression and anti-racism committee. And then I started working for them in 2022 as their senior advocacy manager.
wow, wow, so that's great. Wow. So you got quite a bit of background in volunteering. I was gonna ask you, I'm gonna pick your brain or go to jump to the subject. How did you get into start volunteering in the first place? I mean, about your background. Are you a teacher, by the way?
I am not a teacher, although I have worked in post-secondary.
Yeah.
Um, I'm someone that likes to give back to my community, and I often volunteer depending on causes that are close to my heart. So for example, when my father passed away, I started volunteering with an organization that provided hospice services.
Oh, nice.
Um, but in terms of, how did I get involved? I mean, it just seemed like something that I'd love to do. I do every day. And I don't like being angry or upset. And so one of the things is being better aware of what are the laws, because there's no point being frustrated when, it's the law or it's a bigger issue. And yeah, prior to that, I volunteered for the Young Street Mission. They have an after school education program for kids that live in Regent Park and St. Jamestown. And so I taught kids ranging from 6 years old to 16 how to
Wow,
build their online brand,
nice.
and taught them how to create a blog. Um, so I just love being in the community, meeting people from all over, and just, yeah, making people happy.
So I'm gonna pick your brain. So I'm gonna ask you a question I asked a lot of our guests. You remember the first time you did your volunteer work and you got such first feedback and you said, it feels great doing something with the community. Do you remember that first time?
Well, absolutely. And even it's actually one of the first times was I was actually working for an organization, and I was helping an equity deserving older woman who was a francophone, and when she took the time to call back and thank me, that really was a bug that
That's so
I
nice.
realized how important it is to help people that don't get enough attention or help. So
Great.
yes, it does feel wonderful.
That was the first time, eh? So just like, and that just got you hooked into more volunteering and all. So what drives you, Alison Stewart, into volunteering? I mean, it's all volunteer work. It's on your time, but you never give up. I've seen all your tweets from last year. I said, this is an amazing woman. You also with Beth Levy?
I don't think I do.
Oh, she's just like yourself, a volunteer, a good voice for the community. We need more of that. So just amazing. I was also gonna ask you, your background. I don't know too much about your background, like where you're from and all.
Okay, well, before I go into my background, I just wanted to mention that volunteering is great, but I mean, one right now in my role at Cycle Toronto, I'm actually a paid staff member.
Oh, are
And
you?
so
Okay.
I think like many people going through the COVID pandemic, which still, is ongoing, it was an opportunity for me to revisit, what is important to me. So I made the decision to take a different approach, and instead of being a public servant, working in the not-for-profit sector. So my volunteer and my professional life is a little more blended than it was, but I love my job.
Great.
So my background, was weird from the beginning. And when I say that, I mean, I was adopted at the age of 5 months.
Nice.
I'm mixed race, and mixed race into, not entirely sure. But I was raised by academics in Guelph, and I was very lucky to be raised by them, and they are my parents, because being academics, they place the value of experiences and education over material wealth and goods. And because they were liberal arts, philosophers, they, gave me a lot of breathing room to figure out what I wanted to do. And so I got a lot of freedom to determine my path. And also because of them, they saw the value in becoming bilingual. So back when, Toronto or Canada's official bilingualism took hold, my parents enrolled my sister and I in French immersion, on the grounds that they foresaw that being bilingual in Canada would be beneficial for our future.
Great.
And they
Wow.
were right.
Yeah. My sister adopted two children from Children's Aid, eh? And she was a nurse. She's still now retired, but they tried to have kids for 10 years, and she adopted a little boy, my nephew Nathan, and my niece, I'm the godfather. Just now they're like adults. But then she got pregnant at 43.
Well,
And
it's
it
funny
happened.
because my mother, after they adopted me, my mom was pregnant, and she had, I mean, 8 miscarriages or something horrible and
Wow.
heartbreaking. And
Wow.
of course, once she was, like many people when they adopt, once they're happy and they have their beautiful baby, they don't worry about it as much, and they actually successfully bear a child of their own,
That's
or
great.
natural, whatever they call it.
That's amazing. Wow. That's great. So now as being adopted, you're part of the family, you're going back to the community, basically, right? You got taken in by a lovely family and you're giving back to the community. I love it. So what drives you what I'm gonna ask you, what deters you from when you see people get discouraged from volunteering? Like when they look for an avenue and they got kind of put down or got put sideways, say, like what's it worth it to you doing that?
Well, I don't know that I would think of that in a deterring way. I think, for example, one of the reasons why you know, I've considered and I've been volunteering for most of my life is because my parents, especially my mother, was active in her community. And so I saw that, right? And it's, our environment is very much shapes who we are. And I would say it's more of, sharing the joy that can come with volunteering with people that may not consider it. But I'll also note that it's also a bit of a barrier. So for example, when people are working multiple jobs, if they have children, it's really hard to dedicate your personal time depending on your personal circumstance. And I even took a break for volunteering for a couple of years because I took a senior level job for York University, and I just simply didn't have the time. I did a lot of international travel, plus a lot of, meetings and work events that were in communities, but it just didn't allow me the time to volunteer. So I just think that's something that we should all be cognizant of, is that especially today, a lot of the youth are having a harder time to access volunteering opportunities because they're, working multiple jobs.
Wow, it's amazing. So you'll say it's funny that you say that ask you when you're doing your work, working full time, did you miss that itch about volunteering, like get it back to the community? Like you're too busy, you can't do it, but you want to get back into it?
Well, because volunteering is really, it's fun. It's a little more community based. It's, when you're at work, you have specific, things and processes that you have to follow. Volunteering gives you an opportunity to discover a different way of doing something, and also to contribute by bringing your style to something that may not have been used before. So for example, I'm not a trained teacher, although I do teach a college course for Collège Boreal. When I was teaching kids at the after school program, I wasn't given a curriculum or a plan. And so I had carte blanche to sort of shape and discover, teaching. And so that was a lot of fun. And it gave me an opportunity to reach out to some of my friends who are teachers, looking for resources. And, it gave the kids a rich experience because, as one of them said to me one day, I was unlike any of their teachers.
Oh, that's nice.
And
So
I
cool.
said, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And he said, it's a good thing. And I said, and why do you think that is? And he said, well, you talk to us like we're adults.
Oh, that's
And,
nice.
you ask our opinions. Like, none of my teachers ask me what I think. So again, it's that wonderful, any situation, I firmly believe that, both parties should be learning 50%, regardless of status or position. We all have things to contribute in different ways.
Funny you mentioned about the talking to the people rather than talking down to them. Also, with like politics, like I find the missing politics in the election. There's no connection between the youth and politics. There's no they want to have an interest, but they're not heard. Like you just said, they talk to you like they like talking to you because you talk to them as adults, and that's what's missing. I found like during the election, two elections, they all say like the youth is missing in the politics. We got to get an interest in there. They like to get involved, but they want to be heard. But sometimes they're not heard in the right place. And you're talking about what you said. They talk to you. They like talking to you because as an adult, treat it as a person, not just as a small idea and just like put aside because you're a youth. But you know what? They all matter. Like a lot, if you go back in history, I like architecture history. A lot of things have been discovered through youth. Like people don't realize that. Like just even like one simple idea and just like puts it forward, it makes a great outcome for a community, right? That's what I always believe. Like even your idea, like your stuff, like you did, like your background, you talk about working with the hospice, all of the experiences for you just looks, it just shows your personality, the way you just present yourself, and all that experiences makes you, that's my observation, makes you such a great advocate for the community. And that's even, feel all the things you get into, all of, trials and tribulations, but just, and then you can relate that on other people, like the youth, and then, because you're relating as them, right? Not just as a learning, but also teaching as well, right? Sorry, what?
Well, it's the one thing about humans is, one, we all want to talk about things we like, or we want to share what drives us, what we're doing, our opinions. And then another thing about humans, and this is where I think it can be frustrating if people don't actively look to find out different points of view or different experiences, that we tend to like discovering things ourselves, right? I mean, there's all this, despite what the research says, best practices, feedback from specific groups of people, but there is this tendency to people that if they're not, if they don't live that experience, or
Yeah.
it doesn't impact them, then they don't care. And I think this is why representation in government and positions of power is really important, because decisions are made based on people's experiences,
That's so true
right?
what you
So for
said. Like, yeah,
example, having Olivia Chow as a mayor, I mean, just the fact that we have a woman who is an immigrant, who's Asian, who has rides a bike, who has lots of experience, that shapes how she presents herself and who she listens to. And so that is really helpful, like having that mayor that's open to a diversity of opinions and not just one specific group that tends to be, privileged, if we'll
yeah,
say.
and she's grassroots like the rest of us, right?
Yeah.
And it's so I met her at the before I talked to you at the Ontario. I met her in the hallway at the Ontario Place conference there, and I
Yeah.
went up, and she just talks to you like she puts a time aside for you. I talked to her. I actually bugged her. I said, "Are you gonna run? Are you gonna run?" I kept teasing her. She gave me a card. She just gave me a call. We had a few ideas going back and forth, but she's like just a regular person like the rest of us, And that's what I find missing sometimes. When you get to a certain point as a counselor, not putting it the counselors down, but you got to relate with the people. Unless you have the experiences living in poverty or on the streets, what I've done myself, and you've gone through your own experiences, you relate with the people. People like you and Olivia Chow, like now that she's in there, we need more people like her in there, right? Like, yeah, you probably could think of the top of your head, like who we know personally that could be right there, like people we met through the years or people you volunteer. You go like, you should be in council because you relate with people. You've been through, right?
Well, I don't think, I mean, I honestly, I mean, I thank you for all your kind words, but I feel I'm pretty new to the community. I, there have been, I'm really, um, inspired by the people that have been dedicated decades of ongoing advocacy work and their personal time, that real consistency over decades. So I'm inspired every day by meeting people that are on the front lines, and to find an issue and just go out and find solutions to it. um
Was I putting you on
it's
the
a
spot? When I put, was I putting you on the spot of
Sorry?
running?
Of running for council? No,
No,
I
I didn't.
have not.
I didn't ask that question in the interview.
Okay.
I put it on the piece of paper ready when I did the survey.
No, I do. I'm happy being in a nonpartisan position, and working with whoever is in power. And I'm inspired by, everyone that puts their hat in the rink to become a local councillor or a mayor. It isn't an easy job. And I think it's wonderful that our city council is becoming more diverse, and I will happily support, perhaps from the back end, if I can give any contributions to campaigns. But no, I will leave the actual running for council to
I didn't tease
others.
you that. But you said earlier, you said you're just new and you're young at the whole advocacy experience. You need people more experience, but you got so much experience. Just I don't case about values of years, but just the time put in and the input that you put on this. I'm gonna tell you, when I did my canvassing, I asked a lot of questions about voters in different areas. I had a list of volunteers with your name on it, plus a few others. And I went through this list. I said, tell me who stands out in this list. They said you and Jennifer Alexander and Jenny Warden. All the
Oh,
time I got
that's
this.
so
Yeah, your name was on the list. So just let you know.
oh,
So
well, that's wonderful.
I know. I'm not bugging it, but I'm just saying. I disagree with you. I don't think you have to be more experienced to be a volunteer, or even to work in council. I know you're not going to run, but I'm just saying. But your experiences right now, your name is. I knew your name just be when you started the election. I knew your name was out there, and like others. I go, you know what? And I volunteer. I've interviewed a few right now the last few months, and just these are the type of people we need in City Hall. Grassroots experience, hardships, learning how to like do without. That's the biggest thing. If you learn how to do without, I think it makes you a better person inside and helps your community. Always. That's what I believe.
Absolutely. But I mean, there's also work needed in the city staff, all the different, civil or
Oh yeah.
society organizations. It's pretty amazing, right? How our society comes together to
Yeah.
sort of counterbalance our system. So
Yeah, just about the
there
city.
is a role for
Yeah, it's funny.
supporting
Yeah, I'm
people.
glad you mentioned that. The city clerks. I always say kudos to the city clerks. People don't realize, like, we have to use 25 signatures for councillor or mayor. Now we put those. I had 40 signatures, but the city clerks gotta go. They got to do all the research. They got to do all the paperwork, right? And they got to do all that accountability. So people, I always say, I always love the background when you have volunteer work, like when you get people set up and get all the stuff going on. I always like how they got all set up, who volunteered, the time you put in. I love that part. The show and tell is nice, but I like the background, like you're saying, what you said. The city clerks, the staff, they do a lot of work. People don't realize that, like they're saying, like, look at what they got to do. Like that's a hundred candidates. That's like 25 signatures a piece. The amount of paperwork they got to go with, and they got to research. I talked to them quite a bit. They got to go through all the background checks, addresses, make sure it's all right and correct, signatures and everything. Yeah, like I said, the background, like yourself. I know you're advocate for the community. You do a lot of background, and I think I don't know. I'm picking your brain here, but I have a feeling that you do so much more than what people realize behind the scenes, like Cycle Toronto, like stuff getting done, and then yeah, well, that's wonderful. Look at Cycle Toronto, yeah, but look at the background. Look what Alison Stewart did behind the scenes. You know what I mean?
It's what we all do, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
it is. Yeah,
we all are a lot more than what we think.
yeah.
And actually, it's funny, you're talking about volunteering experience. I realize I haven't given a shout out for the fact that I am currently volunteering for Culture Link's Bike Host program.
Wow, wow.
And that's something that is
Oh,
wonderful, right?
can you
Part of
explain
that
that?
bringing.
I know what that is. Can you explain it to the people what that is? I know what that is.
Oh, right. Well, Culture Link is part of their, welcoming newcomers to Toronto. And in this specific program, it gives people bikes to try for a period of a couple of months, and they're partnered with a bike mentor. So we have bike
Wow,
mentors like myself that are paired with bike mentees, and we take them around Toronto. We do bike rides. So it's an opportunity to meet new people. And for example, on Saturday, we are going as a big group to Niagara Falls. We're going to take the GO train with our bikes and spend the day biking and socializing.
wow.
So that's a wonderful way of helping share, the love of Toronto and how wonderful biking in the city can be.
Wow, you're like a tour guide. My goodness me. Wow. How many people you got for going to Niagara Falls at the weekend?
Well, I believe right now the group is 33, and I'm not organizing it, so that's wonderful.
Oh,
It's
it's nice.
wonderful to
Wow.
be a volunteer.
It's a
I'm there to
volunteer.
help support, but
Wow.
it's Culture Link, and their wonderful team that are actually organizing and coordinating the outing.
I'll put the link down and I'll put your links for your Cycle Toronto as well on the after the interview there. But yeah, I heard Culture Link. How long has it been around now for?
Oh gosh, they've been around for a few decades, I believe.
A lot of people I know about it, but a lot of people haven't even heard of it. That's like if they watch the interview, they go like Culture Links. Like I always like the fly on the wall. I always think when people do interviews with me and I talk back, well, I always think to people watch these interviews, like watch you, and maybe something you'll say will inspire people, like Culture Links, and they'll go and do their thing, right? And one day they'll come back to you, and they'll say, and I'll ask you, Alison Stewart, has anybody ever come back to you and say, you know what, you inspired me for doing something, or what you did, or as a volunteer, or what you proposed, or what you were responsible for? Has anybody ever come back to you?
Oh, I mean, well, you are right now.
I was gonna get you on me. I was gonna tell
Um,
you. Go ahead, sir. You go first.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, it's nice when people do tell you that you have done a good job or that they've helped them access something. So, but yeah, but I would say that most of the time, it's just, through smiles and talking to people, right? It doesn't need to be acknowledged in any way.
That's so nice. Yeah. Well, I was gonna have now my turn now. I'm gonna say since last year election, I'm gonna compliment you. But you inspired me for the election, like as a volunteer. I saw all the work you done. I looked at all your different backgrounds, and I said, "Wow, like, where are these guys?" I said, "Where do they get the time to do all this stuff?" I said, "You know what? I got to get my ass in gear, excuse the language, but you know what?" So I say last year, meeting you on the tweets and watching your stuff and other people just inspired me to be a better volunteer and back with the city. That's where you learn from. Your learning tools has helped me to become more involved, actually work with the pod here as well. So you inspired me, Alison Stewart, since last year before I even met you. So
Well,
after it's so nice to have you as interviewing for the first time, right? It's just amazing, you
That's
know.
wonderful. And tell me what, so, and where, tell us what you're volunteering on right now that you're
So right now,
particularly enjoying.
I mean, like
Yeah.
what I'm working on, or what I did before in the past, or what?
Well, what are you volunteering on right now that you want to share?
Oh, well, working with TDSB, where there's a dietitian, his name Duad, that's his nickname, but he goes around different high school, different grade schools. He teaches kids education on protein, proper food etiquette, proper education. And the funny thing, I didn't know this. He told me this during the election last year. Canada is one of the few countries that does not have a national nutrition program. We have a food guide, but we don't have a
Yeah.
food program. Yeah, so I want to work with him right now, and we want to get that into effect in Parliament and pass it. So, meaning once it's passed in Parliament, the government has no excuse but to take care of citizens with proper food and education. Also, there's a lot of kids out there and young adults, even with food banks, special needs, and like people like have celiac, gluten free and all. A lot of people know about that. Donations come, and if people are more educated, also volunteer with food banks. I want to make a coalition with food banks because we don't have it right now. It's in other cities. Each food bank is kind of separate by itself. I want to make a website. So like say you have special needs, say like you need something with gluten free, you can go to the website, you can see where it's located, or you can have it distributed, have it all, even it out. Because basically it's a lot of them are unknown. So that's one of my second thing to volunteer. Also volunteering with the military, retired from the military. And I work with people that are like old vets that are been injured through the war, or like in Afghanistan, like a lot of through. But back then when I was in the forces, they didn't have me for support for mental health and all. Now they do, which I'm glad. So I'm working with a lot of
Mhm.
people like that, like on the internet and all. So I'm doing that as well. So it's a little nerve wracking
Those
sometimes.
are great causes.
Yeah, and I love it because they come back to you and they go back to the communities. Because the way we're trained in the military is always to volunteer, and everybody's equal and nobody's different, no matter what your age, sexuality, your race, religion, whatever. We're all the same. That's how I treat everybody the same, like with the respect. And then my dad always taught me treat every job as important. Everybody has important jobs. There's no such thing as a minor job because every job, you said earlier, everything contributes to the whole to make one thing complete. So I'll say like say you're just take that. I think I got 10 minutes left. Just to always volunteer as a person and treat everybody equal, right? Because if you look at somebody less, it's saying like say you're a janitor and you say, oh, you're just a janitor or whatever. That's not, you shouldn't be like that. Because you know what? You could be in that position, or you were in that position too. You never forget your roots, where you came from. Because I've done like you probably done all kinds of different jobs, and some jobs you didn't want to do, but you had to pay the bills, and we did it, and that's what it's all about. Experiences back in the grassroots, right? Helping each other out. So that's what I'm volunteering right now doing the pods. I'm working on an art website, art gonna call arts. I'm gonna promote local artists, thespians, musicians, poets. I'm gonna promote the local arts. I'm also working on a online book plan right now. I'm gonna get that going with communication. Just meeting people. I'm just doing this video, meeting you and meeting people in the past and hearing their stories. I love hearing people's stories, and I love hearing like where they came from. Like I had one guy not too long ago. He suffered epilepsy, and he did an interview with me. And now as an epileptic, he's training people with Down syndrome and schizo, and they're training as a personal trainer. That inspires me, and we talk all back and forth now. Yeah, so like meeting you for the first time when I saw you at the conference, I said Alison Stewart, and you said, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
It was so hilarious. I knew more about you than you.
Well, I thought I asked that a little more, nice, like, oh, who are you?
You
Like,
did. No, I said you're at the table and you said Alison Stewart. I saw you. I recognized you, and you said hello. Who are
yeah.
you? Yeah, that's more like you said. You didn't like who are you? But then thinking about it, and then as you as a volunteer, like it's just you guys inspire me. That's why I want to be out there when you guys are doing your presentations, like you did your videotaping there. It's just something I can do. My contribution, just say thank you for your advocacy for the community. Let's videotape it. Let's keep it as a memory, and people can watch it on the YouTube, whatever, and check it out. So that's I do for I got 8 minutes. Yeah, so that's what I do for volunteer. I got some other things that I idea as well. I want to do. Also, want to do, my thing is food security, as you know, my platform as well. We didn't talk about it during the election. There was a debate about it. Was only talked about food security is such a major thing. We don't talk now. They're talking about the after election, but now they just said, if you saw yesterday, they just said now they now have stats that children that have lack of food are now more increase of children with mental health going to doctors and all that. That's because of food security. So I don't work on that. So I had to propose some plans, and We need to get more things going. We need to get that 900 million wasted in food, security, like food waste, just good food, good quality food. I've been doing it for 25 years as volunteer with food and all, and I want to get that. That's my main thing on the platform is just feeding the people. It's all about the people. Housing is nice, but people with empty stomachs ain't
Well,
gonna,
we
sorry.
need nutritious food, and one of the horrifying government policies that took place um along with the residential school system was that they starved a lot of
Oh
the
yeah.
indigenous kids, and they researched it, so they know, right, that when you are malnourished and you're starving, you don't have the energy, you don't have the same cognitive ability. So humans need food and water to survive and thrive.
Yeah.
Um, it's criminal that our history on how we treated indigenous populations, and we're still treating them poorly. We're still inequitable. I mean, the fact that food insecurity is impacting so many families, it's heartbreaking. And I applaud you. We absolutely need a national nutrition program, ensuring that kids, when they go to school, they're given food.
Well, they have these like, do you hear Toonies for Tummies? Have you heard of that?
Sorry.
Toonies for Tummies. It's a program for it's called Toonies for Tummies. For every toonie, every I think every once or twice a year, grocery stores, like some of the major ones, they you donate a toonie that goes to the this program called Toonies for Tummies, and it
Okay.
feeds gives breakfast for kids that are missing breakfast in the morning going to schools. Some of the churches I go to, they have volunteer staff that actually open up the kitchen in the church in the morning because the school's not too close, not too far, and they actually feed, and it's all donations. My thing is, I want to get the government. I like to ask the government to fully fund this for all kids to have a proper breakfast, not to miss meals. It's funded by grocery stores, also major companies. They all fund it. It's all donations, but unfortunately, the government doesn't fully fund it. I wish they would, because proper food gives your smart brain, get better results, education, and give back to the community, right? That's what I always believe. So it's there, but it needs to be worked on, I think, and more other programs as well. Like, and even what you said, like working with these immigrants coming from different countries and going on bike rides, that's just, lack of food there. Like they come into different, like, we saw the lineup last year or this year with the food banks, especially Fort York Food Bank downtown. And that was just ridiculous. And they're like, doing footage of all these people lining up, and that tells you something. It said this is during the election. Why is it not talked about in the election? Never mind housing and all the promises of crime and all. This is the major thing. Core is housing and internal things, fixing apartments and all that. I got about 4 minutes left, so yeah, that's what I think. Food security is my major thing. It's so important, growing up. Like one they say used to be 1 to 5 kids are starving going to school. Like I have one of my nieces went to school one day. She brought home one of her. I was babysitting. She brought one of her friends. She says to me, Godfather, that was my nickname. She said, can you give my friend some more food? I go, why? She misses breakfast twice a week. I was, oh my gosh. And but the kid doesn't say nothing about it. She's used to that lifestyle because she's been raised that, she's gonna miss a few meals during the week of breakfast, but she's used to it. But she happily plays along, and she tells my niece in confidence she's, not getting enough food, and so we took it upon us. We phoned the churches and we got some more people involved. We got a list there, more people that put on the list. Some people really hesitant because a lot of pride is involved, but admitting that you need something or need some help, especially food wise. And some people take it personally, like they think they feel less, that they want to reach out, they need help because they can't support their families with, at a case, it's just the price of the food. It's just so much. But we set things up, little things like you're just reach far corners, like all the stuff you're doing that. I can imagine like in 20 years, what you're doing now with fusion, and that's gonna expand and all that. It's gonna be amazing, like. Have you ever seen something you done as a volunteer way back and you go like, now it's expanding, go like, wow, I was part of that. It's amazing.
Pretty neat. Like, I mean, for example, when I think about what's accomplished across, for the cycling city, when I began volunteering with Cycle Toronto, I mean, the two main campaigns that were being worked on was, Bloor, Danforth, and Yonge. And today there are protected bike lanes on all three of those routes.
Yeah.
And right now working on having bike lanes on Bloor, from Mississauga all the way to Scarborough. So that's pretty amazing. That's
I know.
that's 10 years.
I know. Talked to Albert, Robin, and Robert as well. Like I look
Yeah.
back, they said they started 10 years ago with we just did the celebration there on the Blur line. Now,
Mhm.
I'm a Scarborough. I'm a Scarborough guy. I just did some videos just the other day on my bike. I said, Scarborough needs bike lanes, not just on Blur only.
Yes.
We got
Now,
an
are
Edmonton.
you in Guildwood? What
I'm
what
in
ward
Ellesmere.
are you
I'm in 16, Ward 16. So I'm Ellesmere Victoria Park area,
in?
right?
Okay.
Yeah, so there's no I'm on Victoria Park. There's no bike lane. Just in the video, there's no bike lanes from Victoria Park from Steeles all the way down to Danforth, and there's no bike lanes. There's one at Eglinton. They need a bike lane on Lawrence, Ellesmere. These are major areas that are always corrupt
Yes.
traffic, especially when the DPP closes down on the weekends. This place is like a zoo. But I found a solution to how to solve traffic. They said they have traffic problems. It's not a case of cutting down on and getting security guards and traffic. You probably noticed this. There's less traffic, but there's no schools out. The schools are out, there's less traffic.
Well,
So I
yes.
so I say, you know what? Get the kids that get picked up by buses, yeah, less traffic, like they do in England, right? We got about 1 minute. You want to go to the next one already? Do you want to take a break or whatever? Or what?
I I wouldn't let's like if you wouldn't mind taking a break, 'cause it's 10 after 5 and I actually have a couple of deadlines I need to get
Oh,
to.
okay, you want to do
So
another
maybe
interview?
we could do the second one later. And it would be really helpful if you send me some of the topic, like some of the talk or the theme of that interview.
Oh, sure, yeah. What we'll do is I got an interview with Robert at 8 o'clock apparently, and so it's 5:09. So what time did you want to do the interview at?
Could we do it next week?
Yeah, we'll do it. I'm gonna get cut off here in 1 minute. But you know what? I'm gonna thank you for having you. We'll do your second interview next week. I'm gonna cut off here in 1 minute. And thanks for coming
Yeah.
on the show. I'll do you next week and I'll send you the link for next week. And it's an honor having to meet you on my video. First time. It's great. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Phil, and thank you for all your kind words. It's really wonderful.
Yeah,
You've
you're
made
welcome.
my
You're welcome.
week.
Oh, yeah, great. You made my week. Thanks for having. So I'll see you next week then, okay?
Okay, bye,
Okay.
Phil.
Yeah.